What's up, my bearded bros? TheBeardedMaineiac here. If you see the title of the video, you obviously know what this is. I am recapping my fantasy draft of this upcoming season. I have done 4 so far, but this is going to be my primary fantasy team. I like to test things out with like the other teams, so there's that. At quarterback, cause I'm gonna go position by position and then give my thoughts on each player that I drafted and why I drafted them where I did. My first player is Russell Wilson, quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, an extremely talented player, very capable. I got him a little bit later than I thought I could. I believe it was the 6th or 7th round, somewhere around there, maybe even the 8th round. It was pretty late for him. And he was honestly one of the last quarterbacks taken in my league, and it was kind of weird. What I like about him is he can gain fantasy points through the ground or from the ground. He can pass quite well. The only issue with that early on in the season is injury. And I currently don't have a backup quarterback, but I do have a very solid roster to make up for a slow week. And I say that because at running back, or at least at RB1, because I will clarify that, RB1, we have Devonta Freeman from the Atlanta Falcons. One reason why I love the way I'm doing this is because I can show the depth, and it gives it a little bit more personality, I guess, to my thought process at the same time. As you can see, he's a nice veteran running back. He's been in the league for enough time. Been very productive. Last year he didn't do so well because he got hurt, but I believe he's gonna bounce back this year. And he plays in a solid offense. Calvin Ridley, Hooper, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan allows him to free up. He has very capable backups in Ito Smith and Kenyon Barner. I'm not sure how much action Kenyon Barner will see, but Ito Smith should provide enough of a change of pace to where Freeman will get rest, but he should give you about 20 carries per game, or at least 20 touches, because he can catch the ball relatively well, although I don't think Madden has his catch rating too high. Yeah, it's only 73, which isn't great, but it's, he can catch it. And for our RB2, this was later in the draft. I believe this was like round 6 or so. So I wasn't too excited to take. No, I think this was like round 5 or 6. I'm trying to think. No, this was like round 7. I got this guy round 6 or 7. Derrick Henry. I know it's a tough pick, and I'm well aware of his up and down nature. He can have good weeks and bad weeks, and they interchange quite often. But I believe early on in the season, he's worth the risk. Dion Lewis will see enough action to where Derrick Henry should stay fresh throughout the season. He plays against a pretty solid offensive line with a pretty shaky quarterback, so they're going to have to lean on the run game probably more often than they would like, which helps me out quite a bit. And overall, I like Derrick Henry. Highlights of his last season probably had to be that monster touchdown he had, I believe, against the Jaguars. It was absolutely incredible. And now, with my first pick of the draft in this one, because I was picking 5th. I was picking 5th in this draft, which is not an ideal spot to pick, but that got me DeAndre Hopkins, who is possibly the best wide receiver in the league. He's absolutely incredible. He is fast. He can juke. He's agile and fast, which at the same time is just as you can see, his catch ratings on here are 99, which is absolutely incredible. His quarterback, Deshaun Watson, throws the ball pretty well and should keep continuing to improve, which only helps Hopkins, because Hopkins is one of those receivers that has produced incredible numbers without having incredible quarterback. So if his quarterback improves and he improves, and that helps his stats improve, he could potentially have a 2,000-yard season on the works. He has a supporting cast of Will Fuller and Kiki Cutie, who are both worth late round draft picks for depth or insurance or whatever. So he doesn't have people to necessarily take as many targets out. And one thing I believe actually helps him out a lot more, but also kind of hurts him depending on how you look at it, is the loss of Lamar Miller to a torn ACL. One thing the reason why I say that is one reason why I think it hurts is without as big of a threat as a run game, they could much more easily cover Hopkins, or at least try to. One reason why that helps is I don't think even if you double cover Hopkins, he's that easy to take away. That and Duke Johnson seeing more of a prominent role, I believe opens up that offense a little bit more, where Johnson is younger, a little bit fresher, not much younger, but a little bit younger. Hopefully Lamar Miller bounces back and has a good season next year. And for my wide receiver 2, I believe this was my third round pick, because I had already picked someone else who I'll go over in a second. But my wide receiver 2 is Mike Evans. I wanted to go Chris Godwin in the later rounds, and I'll explain this real quick. I wanted to go Chris Godwin in the later rounds, but I have a small issue when I draft as I'm going down, being like, oh, Godwin is much better than any other receiver left, but he's on the same exact team as Evans, so if one catches the ball, that's just another ball that it's hard to balance to having two wide receivers on the same team. So I also try to make sure I don't have people that share bye weeks too much. That way I can have a nice rotation in and out of the lineup without having to drop players, to add players to cover bye weeks and stuff like that. Mike Evans, overall, very good receiver, very big, tough, punch you in the mouth kind of guy, and I love it. And Jameis Winston, he's the only thing that concerns me about Mike Evans, which is why getting him like the third round didn't stress me too bad. But I'm looking for him to be productive. Last year he got 290 fantasy points, which ranked 9th place among wide receivers. So the fact that I got him in the third round is, I think, incredible. And for tight end, of course, I did mention who I picked in the second round. And if you think about second round tight ends, there's only a couple that are worth that kind of pick, and that's Travis Kelce of the Kansas City Chiefs. Do I like Kelce? As a player, he is fantastic. Fantastic. 6'5", 260 pounds, nice big body wide receiver. Doesn't block so much, which in fantasy football means absolutely nothing. But in a way, absolutely means a lot. If you think about a receiver like Travis Kelce, one of those big body wide receivers who can catch the ball, who can run over you, if you think about them as an incredible blocker as well, it can take a lot out of a player to block and still run routes all in the same game. So I think that giving Kelce more energy to obviously catch the ball and stuff. I mean, it's not a big change. It's just one thing I've noticed between tight ends. You'll notice it too a little bit when you watch George Kittle. He's not really that big of a blocker, but I think it just allows him to dominate the passing game even more. I love Kelce. Very productive receiver. Has a very great quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who actually in this league went second overall, which was absolutely nuts. Number 1 rated fantasy tight end last year. He should be in the top 3 again this year, which makes him just an absolutely solid pick. And currently in my flex position, I have a running back who plays for the Bears. Now, this is just matchup based. He's not going to be my starting running back for long. I just think his matchup against Green Bay is nice. There it is, David Montgomery. It's probably going to change before the regular season, but I'm going over the whole roster, so I will cover him first. I love his potential as a rookie. He does have to battle Mike Davis and Tariq Cohen, but Montgomery, with his skill set, he can catch the ball, he can run the ball, relatively well. He's only 5'10", but he's 220, so he has a lot of he has a lot of power in his legs, and he's still shifty. I think a lot of his ratings are gonna go up as the season goes on. By week 8, I do not think his awareness will still be 73. I don't think his agility or his his stiff arm, his elusiveness, I believe those will go up to high 70s. And I think overall he will be a 76, 77 by week 8. If I had a guess, just by the way it looks, I think he'll be around the 20th to 19th, maybe 25th to 19th ranked fantasy running back. So for RB3, that's not bad. It just depends on how Mitch Trubisky can play. That's going to be how this Bears offense rolls. If Mitch Trubisky can't pass for shit again, the running backs are going to struggle again, and it's going to suck. But he's worth a flyer, especially when I drafted him, I think, around round 9 or 10. Now, ironically, for kicker, because obviously in the NFL.com fantasy leagues, which I recommend doing NFL.com fantasy because their quick matchmaking service, if you don't have time to schedule a draft, is fun. And you play against a lot of idiots, so that makes it even funner. We're not picking Pinheiro. We picked this guy quite early. We picked him, I think, round 11 before anybody really picked too many times. We got Greg Zuerlein, and I did kind of reach for him a little bit, but I thought with the Rams offense, Todd Gurley being a little bit more healthy, Brandon Cooks, Cooper Kupp being healthy is another huge part of that as well. Robert Woods, I love that trio of wide receivers. The tight ends are very solid as well. Offensive line is very solid as well. So they'll get a lot of scoring opportunities. And Goff, one thing I like about him, but I don't like about him, is he is a good young quarterback. Madden has him rated at like an 83, which is absurd. He's probably a 78 in my book. But one thing I like about the Rams offense and Goff not being 100% polished yet is they're going to miss some scoring opportunities. And what that means for me is Greg Zuerlein's going to get even more field goal attempts than he would necessarily touchdowns. I'm not saying the Rams aren't going to score a lot of touchdowns. They will. But I think a good chunk is going to be converted to field goals where Goff isn't that diamond prospect right yet. He might get there, might not, but who knows. But that's why I thought Greg Zuerlein was worth the gamble. Because honestly, with kickers, you want them on good offenses, but you don't want them necessarily to be too good, because extra points can kill you in a league. I think over the 10 years or so that I've done fantasy football, I've had probably a good 30 to 40 matchups lost because I've had a kicker who just kicked extra points compared to like 50-yard field goals and stuff like that. I remember I went up against a kicker one week who got over 20 points because he kicked like multiple 50-yard field goals, and it just destroyed me. Anyway, for our starting defense, currently we have the Chicago Bears defense, who is absolutely incredible. Just to give you a quick rundown of the potential this defense has, you have Akeem Hicks, a straight up monster on that defensive line, followed with a kind of a weak side right end according to Madden, but I love the potential in these guys. They definitely have what it takes to be in the rotation or whatnot, whatever you have it. I would prefer, honestly, Khalil Mack playing offside linebacker, right end, stuff like that, moving him around anyway, so I don't think it hurts too bad. You have Goldman up front. Goldman is a fucking monster. You have Khalil Mack, as they say, left outside linebacker. I wouldn't label him so much. He's more of a tool. Not like a tool, but he's a utility man. He can play all linebackers positions, probably all defensive line positions, not all at the same time. One thing I'm looking forward to this defense, and one reason why I did draft him, is the improvement of the linebacker positioning. Danny Trevathan, a guy who I constantly target when it comes to rebuilds, and Roquan Smith, who had an amazing rookie year, is going to be a lot better in his second year, and I think that's going to make a huge freaking difference. Leonard Floyd, also a young emerging linebacker who I think is going to have a better year than he did last year. And this secondary is really solid. It does have holes, but really solid with Fuller, Mukamura, Screen, who's very capable, Eddie Jackson, who is absolutely incredible, and it's just going to get better. He could be a 95 overall by the end of the year. Haha, Clinton Dix is another solid player as well, and I think that defense forces a lot of turnovers, can score a lot of defensive touchdowns, and they do have a tough matchup week 1 against the Green Bay Packers, but you know, it is what it is. They were one of the best defenses available, but I did double up on defenses where it is definitely matchup based, and the Bears do have a lot of tough opponents this year. I thought ahead and did draft a second defense. I like running. I'm one of those weird people. If my roster is looking solid enough around round 11, I'll start thinking about maybe doubling up on defenses and stuff like that. Just because sometimes in Madden, if you have a defense who has a shaky matchup, but you're forced to start them, and they get you negative points, it can kill your week. So for my bench, it starts off currently. I have 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs on my bench and a defense. The first running back on the bench right now is Peyton Barber. I have him currently sitting on the bench because of the current running back competition he has going on with Ronald Jones. I don't know really who's going to shine, but either way, I think Peyton Barber is going to be a solid contributor. He's definitely one of those guys who during a bye week he can pop in, get you some points, contribute, stuff like that. And I think he's going to be an improved pass catcher this year, and that's where he's going to really shine. It's not a PPR league I'm in, but either way, I think he's going to do good. And then for the second running back that I have, we're going to be sticking in the B teams, and we're going to go with Kareem Hunt. I love Nick Chubb for the Browns. I really do. I think he's an incredibly gifted young running back. But the reason why I drafted Kareem Hunt is if you look at my running back field with Freeman, Henry, Montgomery, and Barber, I have the ability to take a flyer on a running back. And like Kareem Hunt, who's out for the first 8 weeks, or I believe 9 weeks, because their bye week is week 7. It's an extreme flyer because you only get him for probably like 6 fantasy weeks, which is risky. But honestly, there's a lot of running backs who get drafted who never get played, so it doesn't hurt too bad. And when he gets back, he's going to be in the passing game. He's going to be in the running game. They're probably going to run a lot of 2 running back sets when he gets back. And I think it's going to take the load off of Chubb. If they're in a playoff position as well at that point, I think Kareem Hunt's going to see even more action. He's an incredibly gifted running back who, honestly, after his incident, part of me didn't want him to be in the league. I'm not saying he didn't deserve a second chance. I'm just saying I believe he deserved like a year out of the league, kind of like Adrian Peterson got. But he's too good for some team not to give him a chance. So I thought he was worth a gamble. Week 1 against Tennessee, because it don't matter because he's suspended. And my 3 wide receivers I drafted on the bench are all gambles, which I thought was bold of me, but that's why I drafted 3. As you can see, I have DeAndre Hopkins and Mike Evans, so I don't need great bench wide receivers unless they get hurt, and so help me God, they better not get hurt. First wide receiver I have on the bench, and some people might appreciate this, some people might not, some people might think I'm stupid, but this guy was drafted literally like round 14, so it was worth it. I drafted Corey Davis of the Tennessee Titans to pair with his running back Derrick Henry. I feel like he's very capable. One thing I'm concerned about, one reason why I didn't draft Corey Davis a lot higher, was Adam Humphries being on the team. It's going to definitely take a lot of targets away from him. Tavon Taylor should also see a lot more targets. They have a very solid wide receiver room, and Marcus Mariota isn't a great passer, which very, very, very much concerns me when it comes to Corey Davis. He was a 28th ranked wide receiver last year with 183 points, and I don't think he's going to do too good. But he's worth a flyer. If Mariota can be healthy, if he can improve, especially with the offensive line and running game, it's hard to double receivers, because it feels like you have to stack the box. So I think that's going to open up some opportunities, and it's going to be good. I did take a flyer on another wide receiver who was extremely risky with Josh Gordon. I took a flyer on Josh Gordon relatively early too, as well. I believe he was around 10 pick, if I am remembering correctly. I don't know if he'll play week 1. I don't know if he'll play week 2. I don't know when he will be in exact game shape, and I don't know what kind of look the Patriots offense is going to have, especially with Julian Edelman, Josh Gordon, Demaryius Thomas, Phillip Dorsett, N'Keal Harry, and Jacoby Myers, who by week 8 will be a 70 overall, at least 75 maybe. This offense has a lot of targets, so obviously it's going to be up and down week to week. You never know if Josh Gordon's going to get 8 targets or if he's only going to get 3. And with the running backs like James White and Sony Michel, you really never know. So it's worth a flyer. He has amazing potential. Considering how little he played with New England last year, once he got into the game and once he started clicking before his eventual absence from the team, he still managed 138 fantasy points last year. I think it's good. Definitely worth a late round flyer, especially if you need I'm going to say it this way: if you need wide receiver health, avoid him. Avoid him until like round 12 if you absolutely need wide receiver help, because where he is more in an unreliable situation, it's better to pick a more reliable wide receiver. Which is why not my next pick, but with my next wide receiver, we are going to someplace in the deep black hole, the Oakland Raiders. And it's not Antonio Brown, it's not Ryan Grant, it's fucking Tyrell Williams, a guy who I just find myself drafting every year, and I keep smacking myself for it, because he's that guy who's going to get you points. But he's also that guy who famously will get you points one week when you bench him, but when you start him, he will get you nothing. He was just 1 rank ahead of Josh Gordon last year, 47th overall wide receiver. But again, he's just a bench wide receiver. I'm not going to expect too much from him. Especially because you don't know how the situation with the Oakland Raiders is going to turn out. Is Derek Carr going to take the next step? Who's going to be more targeted? Is it going to be him? Is it going to be Grant? Is Antonio Brown going to be too mad if Williams gets 8 catches in a game? Who freaking knows? But it's worth a flyer because that Oakland offense looks like it could be good. So taking one of those players could be fantastic. And for my last unit, I should say, because we got a defense, because I told you we got 2 defenses, I couldn't leave Josh Gordon hanging in my Patriot Nation team alone. I picked up the New England Patriots, and they lost a lot of key pieces last year with Trey Flowers and stuff like that. And I believe they already potentially lost a couple of people to injuries with Patrick Chung and the cocaine charge and stuff like that. It's going to be an interesting look, but it's one of the deepest defenses the Patriots have had. And I don't just mean overall top tier defense, start with starters. It's the deepest. They have good rotations almost everywhere around the board. Bennett, being one of the new pass rushers, is probably going to have a really good season. I'm predicting 5.5 sacks for him, but who knows. Simon should also be really good in the Patriots system. I'm predicting 3 sacks and 2 interceptions for him as well. Rivers, disappointing so far, but I think he should be good if he does play. Wise and Winovich on the end. Winovich should not have short hair in this picture. His hair is tied up. It has to be tied up. He's not going to be a 69 overall for too long. He's balled out in the preseason. I think this team is going to be one who gets a lot of sacks, a lot of forced turnovers, and that's how they're going to get you points. I think they're going to probably not be necessarily up top tier when it comes to allowing points, but when it comes to just overall getting sacks, getting interceptions, forcing fumbles, maybe getting safeties, maybe getting defensive touchdowns, I think they're going to be one of those teams that can do it. I love the defensive line depth right here, especially at defensive tackle, where you can see with like Lawrence Guy, Danny Shelton, Pennell got cut, so he's fucking out of here. You got Cowart, who is going to be a lot higher than a 63 in a couple weeks. I love the depth here, especially if you look at the linebackers. Jamie Collins looks like he's going to be really good for the Patriots as well. Van Noy, then you have middle linebacker. You have Bentley, Roberts, and Sam, who is probably just going to be Bentley and Roberts. Sam is most likely going to be a cut candidate for me. Um, Probably their weakest position technically, but the way the Patriots run it, that doesn't really matter. Then you have Dante Hightower, bada bing, bada boom, one of the best linebackers, one of the best leading linebackers, I should say, in the league. The way he can just lead the defense emotionally and physically is incredible. You have cornerbacks with like Gilmore, McCourty, Jones, Jackson. Obi is not a cornerback, he is a freaking safety. What are you doing? The top, just the abilities of these top four are incredible. Stephon Gilmore, All-Pro last year. They're not really interceptors, but I think they can do it done. They can play man-to-man. They can play zone, I think, relatively well. You got Devin McCourty, the reliable 32-year-old veteran, and Patrick Chung, the other 32-year-old veteran. Like I said, with his suspension, but I think Hardman's going to take a step up. Terrence Brooks should be good as well. And it should be an interesting season. Anyway, guys, let me know what your fantasy teams look like in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.